And then I did want to ask you a little bit about your style, and I'll start with you because I've just been reading your book. But Mari, it's not lost on me that you are an editor, so we will be back to talk with you about style as well. But I noticed that you do multiple short sentence paragraphs. Your paragraphs are 1 to 2 sentences. Your chapters are extremely short. I'm getting that hit of dopamine frequently as I'm reading. Oh, look at me, look how fast I can read. So what is, obviously that's intentional because you're going after reluctant readers and you're trying to make great readers feel even better about themselves. So what's your rule of thumb for how frequently you should paragraph, how frequently you should chapter, or do you have one?
Yeah. So I think this book is more severely what you were just talking about than any book I've ever written, more like 1 sentence paragraphs and that sort of thing. Ian, like a couple sentence long chapter every once in a while. So I thought a lot about this kind of stuff, as I suppose writers tend to. When I was in grad school, when I was writing sophisticated stories for literary adults, I thought of like breaks as only being for really one reason, which was a change of space or time in the story. Like it was almost like cheating. Like I never use cliffhangers and stuff like that. And then I got into this like for hire writing for reluctant readers, and I started to think very seriously about that, like to be proud of that. Like, how am I going to keep readers reading? And so I started thinking of not only would I have space for time and emotional. As a creative writing teacher, I used to say this. I'm trying to get this right. Breaks used to only be for time changes or emotional changes, perspective changes. All of a sudden now I was ending like midway through a chapter. I would just end the chapter because I wanted it was a cliffhanger and I wanted the reader to have to turn to the next next page. And then I started reading books like the books in poem form, like Kwame Alexander's The Crossover. And I started to see breaks for poetry reasons, for image reasons. And so this book is actually an attempt, I now make line breaks for all of those reasons. And any of them are fine. It doesn't matter because all of those are reasons that keep it seems to me, a reader jumping to the next. And so I will stop because a character or the plot has changed gears. I will stop and break it up because I want to force the reader to turn the page. And I will stop because I think that I've landed on a particularly interesting image, like you would with a poem or something. And I want it just to linger there. So that's how I think of it. I'm just like, no matter what the reason is, it's whatever makes the reader move to the next thing.
Do you use beta readers to get confirmation that you've accomplished that, or when do you know you've done it?
Yeah, so I have I have this twin brother of mine, and he teaches middle school. And so whenever I'm feeling pretty good about a draft, I'm starting to feel confident, then I think, oh, I better have someone, tell me that I'm wrong. I better have kids tell me that I'm wrong. And so I give my stuff to him, and then he shares it with his students quite often. He's also a writer, I should say that. I should give him a plug, and has a book coming out in a month. So I give my stuff to him, and he shows it to his students, and then they give him reviews, and they send them back to me. So I'm really lucky that I have immediate access to that kind of readership.
I want to come back in my next life with you. You got an editor there in the house. You've got your brother getting your student feedback. That's you're the spot. Do you and your brother ever? Do you ever feel like I want to teach middle school, he wants to teach high school, and then you swap? I mean, who would know, right?
Yeah. Well, no. Basically, what I say is, Andy, my brother Andy Hueller, is just like me, except he's 2 inches shorter, and he's just a little bit behind me in success. Like I taught college for a while, and he's never taught. Back then he was teaching high school, so he couldn't quite be me. And now I teach high school, teaches middle school, so I always say that he is always trying to be me, but he's always just a little bit behind. But yeah, he's got a middle grade book coming out in a month called Life in Increments. Andy Hueller. It's a great book.
But
Well, congratulations, Andy. That's huge.
Oh yeah, he was born first by 3 minutes, so it's a sore subject. I actually was born with a black eye. I should just say that so that your readers know this, and that's because the theory is that my twin brother kicked me right in the eye on the way out. So that's one of my fun facts.
Born with a black eye.
Born with a black eye.
Patrick Hueller, born with a black eye.
Yeah, that whole like, I just pushed that to the limit, man.
And look at our time. It's flying by. Because I want to get your take on style, but I also have to ask about flying saucers. What to do? Is there time for both? Quickly, Mario, what are the biggest tips that you're giving writers of middle grade fiction for style? What are the biggest mistakes you're seeing writers make?
Oh boy. I don't know. I think to go to Patrick's point of writing a story that moves, like that's always been something that's important to me too. And writing a story that's going to keep the reader's interest. And middle grade, I feel, is one of the hardest things to write. Because often it's written in the third person, not always, but often. And so you already have some distance from the characters, and you're also, in a young adult book, you generally speaking, are dealing a lot more with kind of the internal experience of a character. I mean, there might be things going on around them that are important and moving the plot, but there's more of kind of, the internal and them looking inward and the idea of like, who am I and how do I fit into this world? And in middle grade, it can go that way, but the plot and pacing of the plot becomes even more important in middle grade because the story tends to take the main focus of the plot, but not always, So I always say that because you just, I think that there's a lot of books that, especially recently, I feel like middle grade has been getting like more elevated in terms of kind of moving almost into the like lower YA sphere at times and looking more at kind of big emotional challenges that characters are having. So that's what I would say. Also, middle grade is generally speaking shorter. And so you're fitting more into this shorter package, and that's really challenging. I mean, I just always I think middle grade is it's very challenging to write a perfect middle grade story. At the same time, I think some of the things I'm seeing, I think the thing I see most in acquisitions that just is always sort of like, kind of an automatic no, is if it just sounds like a story that I've heard before, and I think that a lot of writers, as they're learning, the craft and, maybe on their first couple books, often try to model off the things that they like or the things that they've seen sell well. And I find the most impactful stories are the ones that, as kind of cheesy as it sounds, are the ones that come from like the author's heart and their author's experience, because they just tend to be more engaging and also stand out more because everybody's experience is different in life. And so, yeah, I guess that's what I would say. Yeah, the other thing is, we're always looking for diversity in the books that we publish, and so that's something that is always part of the conversation when we're looking at a book.